Okay, hey, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a cool little preview for you guys from the brand Olto-8 watches. They were founded in 2020, and Olto is 8 in Italian, and it's also the same shape as the symbol for infinity. They believe the number 8 means the perfect life works in 8-hour cycles, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of entertainment. There's a certain magic to the number 8 and the number infinity. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this a wild card watch, very befitting, especially considering the poker theme here. And essentially, a wild card watch is a standout or a statement piece that trades versatility and timelessness for all-out style and peak design. This is their upcoming King model in the Midnight Black Spades dial. Now, this is essentially a poker-inspired satellite hour wheel automatic that's available in stainless steel as seen, or you can actually even get it in titanium. I'll leave a link down in the description, so if you want to sign up to enjoy actually a special launch offer following the link in the description. So you can actually get an extra discount. I'll leave that there depending on when you watch this. If it's before the launch, hey, great. If it's after, sorry you missed the window, but I'll still leave it there anyway. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, let's check it out, guys. So very cool. I mean, we've seen these satellite hour displays before. And yeah, they're becoming more and more available. And because of, advanced production techniques, this is becoming more and more affordable, which is pretty darn cool. Again, I don't know the full pricing or anything like that because this watch, it's still pretty early days when I'm filming this. But I am going to try to, of course, publish it to where you're going to have just a little bit of time in advance if you are interested in this, if you want to learn more. This is one of the more sedate colorways here, but I think it's also one of the more versatile. Of course, it still does have that nice punch. You can see there that little poker chip in the middle. I think that's very, very cool. So in terms of the dimensions, 38.8 millimeters in diameter, 13.4 millimeters thick. You can see that a lot of that is going to be that beautiful high dome crystal. And then this has a 46.7 millimeter lug to lug, 316L stainless steel. It is mostly polished, just a bit of brushing there on the back side. And then you do have, of course, again, that beautiful high double dome sapphire with an inner AR coating. And you can see it adds a lot of dimensionality there. And because this is a more sedate colorway, you actually do have to look a little bit closer for you to see a lot of those extra details, which I think is actually kind of fun in terms of, again, it's something that draws you in. And I think at a glance, you can tell this is a pretty interesting piece. Definitely gives you kind of some of those more high-end vibes because of the complication. But, they found ways to keep things more affordable. I will say the finish on the wheel there, the framing anyway, like everything looks quite high spec. But the framing, to me, the dull finish of it, although it looks like some type of carbon composite, I just wish they would have done something just maybe with a little bit of gloss or something on there, or just something that looked, I guess, less flat, because it almost gives it kind of a plastic effect, unfortunately. So that'd be probably my one criticism in terms of the design and the execution here. I think everything else looks really, really cool. And of course, the readability on there, you can see that it's 10:10. So you have the hour, and then that just rolls across, and then this was 9 before it, right? And then it's going to come, and that's going to switch over. This is now switching over to J, which I think is kind of cool. So it's going to go like 11, and then like basically this would be like Jack, Queen, King, Ace type of deal, which will be really, really cool. And again, that's something that just adds a bit more to that flair. So if you are a pretty heavy card player, or let's say you're buying this for, that family member that really is into playing poker, I think that's where it, ties it in. And yeah, this is a nice themed watch, but it's not over the top. I like that the design elements are tied into the actual complication. So it all feels a little bit more cohesive than something to where, hey, if they just would have put, an image of the king, on there versus just naming it the king, right? I think there's something there in terms of that level of just refinement. Now, getting into the crown, it is nicely signed, as you guys can see, with the number 8 or the infinity symbol, depending on how you want to look at it. And it has nice features. Let's actually give it a quick little wipe, just because, of course, it is a warmer night here, and my fingerprints are going to be all over this piece because it is mainly polished. But you can see really nice organic lines, beautiful curves and slopes there. And then I do love, again, that 3D nature of that dial, multi-layers there. Actually, let me get a little bit more of a wipe off of this crystal. And there you go. Okay, nice and clean now. Okay, so getting into some more of the details, this crown is going to be a push-pull crown, and it's going to be able to actuate that Miyota 9039 that's underneath here. So that does help with thinness. It does have a 42-hour power reserve, beats at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of the beat rate. And the case back, although you can't see it, it's solid and nicely etched, as you can see along the outer sides, just giving you a couple of details. You guys can see all stainless steel, and I'm sure if you bought it in the titanium, it would say all TI there. So very, very cool, nice and clean, and again, very wearable and very, very versatile because of this more sedate colorway. And that's just one of the options, right? If you want something that's going to pop a little bit more, there are definitely some that have more pop. Now, the dial is this cool 3D multi-level dial. Let's bring it in. Look at that. Look at that cool little seconds hand. It's the disc that looks like a cool poker chip that is just spinning slowly there. Keep it some movement. I like that they also kept the spade whited out, so it shows contrast, so you can use that to hack your seconds hand, which I think is nice. It has that 360-degree revolving satellite hour complication. It does use printed Swiss Superluminova. It has 5 atmospheres or 50 meters of water resistance, which isn't too shabby, especially considering, there's a lot that's in here. So the fact that they were also able to fit in a good amount of seals so that they can still keep it at 5 atmospheres, I can appreciate. I think, the bare minimum would have probably been 3. So 5 is better than that, right? 50 meters is better than 30 meters. And to be honest, right, if you're going to go diving, you're not going to typically go deeper than 40 meters. So I'm not saying that you should use this as some type of water sports watch, but as long as the crown is pushed in, you should be good to go in terms of any level of submersion that you would realistically go to. Now, in terms of the lugs here, 20 millimeter lug width, which is great. It does come on this nice 20 millimeter Italian calf leather strap with a 2 millimeter taper down to 18 millimeters at this nicely polished and signed pin buckle, as you guys can see there, and nicely enough, also even milled there on the finger, which, sometimes brands will sneak in a little stamped little piece there. So nice that they went for that. You have a fixed keeper as well as a sliding keeper. You have, of course, this nice, croco texture on the upper, and then underneath this nice soft underside that's going to be able to wrap around the wrist really well. You also do have quick release spring bars, and with that 20 millimeter lug width, it should make swapping things out a breeze. So that's it. Let's actually get this on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this wears really well. Check that out. Very cool. Again, that 3D nature is very awesome. And then, of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens there, apart from it making the autofocus want to kind of miss its mark, also it's going to give you a fair amount of perspective distortion, which is going to make the watch seem much larger than it actually is. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low here, and then what I'll do is I'll just tighten up the frame so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And you guys can see this thing is actually pretty slick. Now, I know the thickness there, when you count the top of that high dome crystal at 13.4 millimeters might be a little alarming, but you guys can see the visual weight is really not there at all. I mean, this still, the organic lines, the tapering, it just sits beautifully on the wrist. And then you do get a little bit of play, a little bit of 3D nature there when you really get a look at the that multi-level, multi-layer dial. So very cool. I'm digging that a whole lot. And you guys can see it wears really well. And I think that's the cool thing, is that you can wear this. It's very clean, very nondescript, I think, at a glance. And then as you take a closer look, I think, again, it draws you in. So it does help. Yes, it's a timekeeper, but also a great, I think, conversational piece, whether you're wearing it as your own personal wildcard watch, or, you know, you receive it as a gift, or you're giving it as a gift. I think that's a lot of fun. And then you think about all the times you can have events that are based off of playing cards, going to Vegas, right, making a big trip, or just having that weekly card game, you know, or again, yeah, just tied to a bachelor party and all those types of things. So that's what I think is really smart about this whole theme, right? There's a lot of crossover within, I think, just that space, right, for men's interests. And I think it can be everything as specific as, hey, this person loves playing cards, playing poker, or the owner can just really have an appreciation or an affinity for that. Maybe their favorite movie is Rounders, right? So I don't know. I think there's a lot there that can be either very specific, or it can even be, I think, a little bit broader, just because, you know, playing cards and playing poker, that's something that's kind of quite universal. I mean, even James Bond, right? Casino Royale, right? So I think there's, again, especially within that watch community, there's a lot there to work with when it comes to, hey, why you may enjoy this timepiece. So with that said, let's go ahead, get it off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, the light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, okay. Now, while not a loom beast by any means, there's actually a fun amount of loom here. Maybe to the point to where it might even be worth it for me to shine a little black light there and really supercharge this so you guys can get a decent readout on this. I think this looks very, very cool. Ooh, okay. Now, of course, I also like to work in a bit of a low light transition, because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming down to buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. You guys can see there's a fair amount of contrast with the white text over a black background. And then you still do have a little bit of a parlor trick of the fact that this does have loom for low light. But of course, at a glance, legibility is not really what this watch is mainly about. Of course, I think once you get used to it, you'll be able to read it fine. But I mean, you know, for me, the luminescence is more of a party trick. It's a bit of a, you know, it's a nice little bonus to a very cool looking watch. But, you know, I don't think that should be a selling point by any means, just because this is not, you know, it's not a diver. It's not anything to where you really need it to perform in darkness. It's just kind of cool. I like that they went that extra mile, and I think that's more to appease watch fans than it probably is in terms of importance of the functionality of this particular timepiece, you know, overall. But I think it looks really cool, and you can see there's a lot of depth there. There's a couple of different textures, whether they be glossy, whether they be matte, whether they have an extra texture kind of ingrained and engraved there. There's a lot to like here. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into some closing thoughts. All right. So on the wrist, lovely wear, closer to, I'd say 10 millimeters without the inclusion of that high dome crystal, which is quite thin. So it's very slick and understated, and the complication pops without being overly in your face. Again, I don't think it's quite as sleek as their ROTO, but I think think that this obviously has a little bit more personality, right? So it might have slightly less versatility, but I think it also has, you know, more of an it factor to it at the same time. So in terms of model variants, it's also available in either a blue or green colorway, as well as a blacked out with red accented variation. In terms of comparable models, it's really tough to draw comparisons without knowing, you know, what the final price point will end up being. So I won't even touch that. I do know, of course, Olto-8's goal is to make things quite affordable. So I would expect this to be similar within that range. I'm not going to expect this to be, you know, if it's going to be $500, and I don't expect it to be much more than that. But I would think, yeah, it's probably be okay somewhere within that range, under $1,000. Absolutely. And considering the complication, I think that's awesome. So for me, guys, bottom line, I really enjoyed Olto-8's similarly themed ROTO that I mentioned earlier, and there'll be a link. We'll do that at the end of the video if you want to check that one out. And the King definitely feels like it's more dynamic, yet also possibly more polarizing design, right? So it might lack a little bit of that versatility. But considering how rarely dedicated dress watches, you know, are in modern collectors' daily rotation, right? Like typically you're going to be rotating through sports watches, chronographs, divers, field watches, all this stuff. And then, yeah, if you have something that's a little bit more dressy, then yeah, you can rotate something in like this. Yes, I do think that dress watches are becoming more worn casually, which is great. But yeah, when you think about all that, I think it just makes a lot of sense to spice up that space, right? By making maybe your one dress watch also a wild card type of watch like this, right? I mean, there's only so much enjoyment you're going to get out of a super minimalist watch that doesn't offer you a reason to want to wear it, right? Besides that default reason of, oh, this is what I wear with my tux, with my suit, this or that, right? So I think this is going to offer you just, I think, a little bit more incentive to get it on the wrist. But it's not for everybody. I mean, clearly, I do think that this is going to be a more polarizing design, but it has a really interesting complication, and I think they executed it quite well. I mean, apart for me, besides that kind of dark gray matted frame there on that rotating disc, which I think if they would have done it maybe just different material, different finish type of thing, it might have flown a little bit better and maybe drew your eye more inward. I think as you look at it at a glance, I mean, it's there, it looks cool. But yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, I think it might have looked a little bit cooler if it had a different finish. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you think that it fits well? I mean, obviously, I think the tonality and the monochrome nature actually does flow pretty well. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.